What if the hardest person to forgive isn't actually the one who hurt you, but you yourself? Forgiveness is one of those words that we throw around, but most of us secretly just wrestle with it because we think it's weakness. We think that it's letting those people off the hook. And we think that forgiveness can sometimes be optional. But the truth is, forgiveness really isn't about them. And sometimes it isn't even about them at all. Sometimes it's about finally forgiving you. Welcome back, guys, to the Manual Dr. AG3 podcast. Around here, we talk about the real things, things that weigh us down, the things that we carry way too long, but most importantly, try to discover the truths that will set us free. So today, we're tackling the topic of forgiveness. Now, when I say forgiveness, I'm not talking about that bumper sticker, forgive and forget, or that overly spiritualized version of someone does you wrong, merely just turn the other cheek. But the real thing that we're going to talk about is that forgiveness is messy. It's complicated, but it's the thing that can change your life if you actually let it. And here's the angle I would like you to lean into today with me is that forgiveness is twofold. On one side, we forgive others because when we don't, we're actually holding ourselves hostages to their mistakes. But on the other side, we should learn to forgive ourselves because sometimes the prison we're living in is the one that we built with our own hands. And to be honest with you, both are hard, but both are necessary and both lead to freedom. Now, I remember working with someone that was sharing with me about how this person in their lives truly just let them down. And talking to them, they kept logically saying that, no, I'm good. I moved on. That was in the past. But the more they talked about it, you can tell that they really hadn't. They would talk about things and circle around about how their name popped up. They explained the physical reaction that they got to that, a tightness in their chest. They clasped their teeth a little harder. And really what they were doing was replaying that pain loop from what that person did to them. And we talked through it and we were working through stuff. And, we found that they were having these feelings. But what the realization became was that although this individual was still thinking about that past hurt, the other person wasn't even really thinking about them at all. They were living their lives. They had moved on. And I would imagine, because again, I didn't get a chance to talk to them, they had moved on without even the wherewithal that they had created an offense. Now, the individual I was working with was stuck in the past, stuck in that moment of, thinking about over and over of all the things that they had done. But that other individual who hurt them was living their lives, posting on the social medias and moving on without any idea of the offense. And even if they did have some ideas, it was clear that they moved on. Now, after working with this individual, I was reflective and I started thinking about myself. And obviously, I had instances where people had hurt me or created an offense. But later, I realized that I sometimes do that with myself. I replay the mistakes that I've made. I think about those times that I fell short. I think about those words that I couldn't take back, the opportunities that I fumbled. And what I actually was telling myself was if I was just keen and clear and keep those memories sharp in my head, that it would keep me accountable, that I wouldn't do those things again. But all it was actually doing was keeping myself stuck because I was punishing myself long after those lessons had already been learned. I hadn't quite learned or even given words to, I needed to forgive myself. And that's when I realized forgiveness is about freedom. It's not about weakness. When I forgive them, or how about this, in my instance, when I forgive me, I can move to new depths of allowing myself to move on, learning the lessons without beating myself up. So I want to talk about 3 core points that I think would be very beneficial to help define this conversation. And the first point is this: forgiveness is strength, not weakness. And I think we should start here because this is where most people get stuck. See, holding the grudge feels powerful, makes us feel like we're in control, and, might actually feel good. See, anger feels strong, but anybody can stay angry. That really doesn't take much effort. Strength is in the release of letting all that go. Strength is saying, I will not let this moment, that moment define me anymore. Now, look, just think about it. When I was at physical therapy the other day, they had me carry these weights up and down to see how my shoulder would react, and I had to walk back and forth in the studio. And it made me think about when carrying those weights, most people could probably pick them up and walk with them. We're used to carrying things as bipedal human beings, carrying a briefcase, a backpack. So that 10, 15, 20-pound weight, it's not overly burdensome. But the real power is not about carrying the weight. It's about knowing when to set the weight down. And forgiveness is the discipline of putting the weight down before it breaks you. Point number 2. Forgiveness of others is freeing yourself from their control. Now, unforgiveness doesn't trap them. It traps you. See, resentment is like letting somebody rent space in your head for free. You guys have seen that on the internets, right? They don't even know they're there most of the time. But you're the one who's sitting there rearranging the furniture, losing sleep, building the walls to accommodate them, and they have no idea. Forgiving someone doesn't excuse what they did. So let me just be clear. Forgiving someone does not excuse what they did. It doesn't rewrite the history. It doesn't mean you have to reconcile or let them back in your life in the same manner, if at all, that they were before. Forgiveness just simply says to yourself, I will not give you control any longer over my joy, my peace, or my future. And if you're carrying that weight, you've got to ask, how much longer are you willing to let them live in your story that you create, that you defined, that you're building and continually writing? Last point number 3. Forgiveness of self is freeing yourself from your own punishment. Now, everything we've talked about thus far, let's flip it inward. Self-forgiveness might be even harder if we're honest. You know the list, the stuff that you did, that thing you should have said differently, that opportunity you missed because you didn't prepare, that decision that backfired that you've been playing over and over again of how it should have gone different, that mistake you made that hurt someone you truly care about. See, we replay those moments like a Monday morning sports show that just does all the highlights, all of the reels. Seems like we all have a top 10 countdown of our failures. And we tell ourselves, if I keep replaying it, maybe I won't make the same mistakes again. But that's not accountability. That's imprisonment. So here's a shift that I would like you to consider. Self-forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It reframes it. It says, that wasn't the end of me. That was just a lesson. And I still get the opportunity to go forward and learn from it. Imagine if you only defined yourself by your worst day. That's what self-unforgiveness does. But what forgiveness says is, I'm more than that moment. I'm bigger than what's there. I can learn from it, grow from it, and do differently going forward. It's almost like a redemptive quality of self-forgiveness, of recognizing that that's who I once was. That's not who I continue to want to be. So here's your challenge this week. I want you to ask yourself effectively 2 bold questions, and I want you to think about. So question number 1 is, who do I need to forgive so that I can be set free? And the second question of, what would I gain by choosing forgiveness? I want you to take some time this week. Sit with those questions, write them down, be honest with yourself, and then take just one step. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's having the conversation. Maybe it's simply saying out loud that I forgive you. And that step could be the start of your freedom. Now, you may be thinking, do I need to have a conversation with that other person? Do I need to sit down in the mirror and talk to myself? If that's what you feel that you need. But just remember, the forgiveness is about you, not them. Because once you start the process of forgiveness, if you're trying to forgive another person, just know their response is not your responsibility. It's about what you're doing for yourself. So truth be told, this exercise could occur and start with you without even connecting or talking to or engaging with someone else. But I highly encourage you to engage with yourself. So if this episode spoke to you, as always, somewhere on this page, click the button to subscribe so you don't miss anything that we have going on here at the podcast. Share with someone that you know that may be carrying a burden, a weight too long. And if you want more encouragement, as you know, there's always, you can reach out to me on my website, emmanuelgeorge.com. And remember, as always, I love you much.